Welcome to The Growth Spurt, a weekly AI podcast by the Second Baptist Church of Ann Arbor.
Yes.
Today, we're diving deep into Dr. Stephen J. Daniels' Senior's Sermon.
Okay.
It's called Waiting, Wondering, and Winning.
Oh, wow.
That title, I don't know about you, but that
Yeah.
title alone just really grabs me.
It does, yeah. It's like those three words together. You're just like, okay, I'm interested.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us can relate to
Absolutely.
those themes. Waiting, wondering, even winning sometimes feels like a far-off thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And so Dr. Daniels takes us on a journey. He uses the story of Joseph
Right.
to kind of unpack all of this. And I think what's so interesting about this sermon is that he doesn't just retell the story of Joseph.
Right.
He uses it as a springboard to really talk about faith, perseverance, trusting God's plan,
Yeah.
even when things don't make sense.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, too, is that he picks it up at a very particular point in Joseph's story where Joseph is in prison. He's been falsely accused.
Right.
And he's just interpreted dreams for these two guys, the cupbearer and the baker.
Right.
He helps them out and then asks for this simple favor. Just, when you get out, mention me to Pharaoh, help me out.
Yeah.
And of course, the cupbearer is restored.
Right.
He gets his job back.
But forgets about Joseph.
Forgets Joseph.
Really?
It's like, oh, man, can you imagine, like, you go out of your way to help somebody and then they just totally forget you. Like, that's got to sting a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, talk about feeling overlooked or forgotten.
Yeah.
It's like you try to do the right thing.
Right.
You put yourself out there.
You do the right thing and then nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
So Dr. Daniels really talks about this and uses it to jump into his first point, persistence with patience.
Persistence with patience. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I mean, because it is a really good point. Like you're being persistent, but you're also being patient. It's not like giving up after a week and being like, oh, they forgot me,
Oh, right.
Like, what did those 2 years feel like for Joseph sitting in prison?
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been so easy to just give up hope.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
To become bitter.
Yeah.
Resentful.
Oh, for sure.
But Dr. Daniels, I think it's so interesting what he says here.
Yeah, what does he say?
He suggests that those 2 years weren't wasted time.
Okay.
It was like this crucible,
Okay.
this period of refinement where Joseph's faith was tested, strengthened. And I was thinking about this as I was kind of rereading the sermon. It's like,
yeah,
that saying pressure creates diamonds.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
And so it's like, maybe those 2 years weren't so much a punishment, but a preparation.
Yeah, preparation.
Huh.
Yeah, and I like how Dr. Daniels even kind of hints at, like, maybe Joseph used this time to reflect.
Yeah.
Maybe he prayed.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he, like, really deepened his relationship with God during those 2 years.
Right. And I think that that's something that we can all do when we're going through those waiting periods.
Absolutely.
It's like, okay, how can I use this time to better myself?
Right.
To grow my faith, to
Yeah.
really become more in tune with what God is trying to tell me.
Right. Or even if you're not sure what God is telling you, maybe use that time to try to figure that out.
Right. And so it kind of, dovetails into what Dr. Daniels talks about later in the sermon, and that's about being prepared for promotion.
Okay.
Waiting on God isn't about sitting around passively,
Right.
but it's about actively preparing ourselves
I see. Okay.
for the blessings
Yeah.
that we seek. And he even uses some really practical examples.
Oh.
Like, imagine praying for a house while you're accumulating debt,
Oh, yeah.
or praying for better health, but you're not exercising.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, like you're praying for it, but you're not doing anything to actually,
Yeah, you're not putting in the work.
Yeah, you're not meeting God halfway.
Right. And it's not about earning God's favor.
Right.
It's about recognizing that we
Yeah.
have a role to play
Mm-hmm.
in our own transformation.
Yeah, it's that faith without works is dead.
Right.
You can't just wish for things to happen. You have to actually try to make them
Yeah,
happen.
you have to take action.
Right.
Right. And that's really where, that transformation, that process of becoming,
Mm-hmm.
we often discover our purpose and our platform,
Yeah.
which leads into the third point. Promotion comes with a platform.
Ooh, promotion comes with a platform. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
And Dr. Daniels talks about how Joseph's ultimate rise to power wasn't just about personal gain or recognition.
Okay.
It was about him being placed in a position
Yeah.
to make a difference, to use his experiences to help others.
Yeah.
And I even thought about, that that verse in Esther 4.14,
Yeah.
and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this.
Right.
And so it's like maybe those waiting seasons aren't just about us. They're about preparing us for that greater purpose.
Right.
For a time when we can be a light for others.
Right.
And I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, I like that.
Because it's like those times that we think are the worst times could actually be the times that are preparing us for something amazing.
It's like a setup,
Right.
for something greater than yourself even.
And I think that's really what Dr. Daniels is trying to get at here. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
he's not even just telling us to share our stories. He's going even deeper. He's talking about like vulnerability, like being willing to share our struggles, our moments of wondering,
right,
can actually help other people to kind of open up too.
right, and feel like they're not alone in this.
Yeah, like, hey, this person's been through something really tough and they came out the other side. Maybe I can too.
Right, and it's about that connection. It's about realizing we're not alone in our journeys.
Right.
He talks about how our testimonies can be a source of hope, encouragement for others.
Especially those that are going through the same thing or something similar.
Exactly.
It'd be really encouraging.
And it can be really hard to do that too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get stuck in those what-if scenarios.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What if people think I'm weak?
Yeah.
What if my story isn't good enough?
Yeah, what if they judge me?
Right.
What if they don't believe me?
Right,
Yeah.
and Dr. Daniels reminds us that it's not about being perfect or impressive.
Yeah.
It's about being real and authentic.
Being real.
And then he even takes it a step further. He says, okay, what happens when we don't share our stories?
Oh, yeah.
What if our silence prevents someone else from finding that courage?
Wow, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's like, what if you're the only person that's been through that specific thing and they need to hear from you that it's okay?
Right.
But you're too afraid to share.
Right.
Then they never get that.
And it reminds me of that quote, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And so it's like, what if we're holding back by not sharing our stories?
Right.
And so I think Dr. Daniels is really onto something here.
Oh, yeah.
When he talks about how our stories aren't just for us. They're meant to be shared to connect us and to point back to God's faithfulness.
Right. It's like sharing is caring.
Yeah.
And in this case, you're sharing God's faithfulness with others.
Right.
Which is a beautiful thing.
Right. And so I think what makes the sermon so impactful is that it's not just about Joseph's story.
Right.
It's about finding those parallels in our own lives, those moments where we've waited, wondered, ultimately witnessed God's hand at work. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of our struggles, God is working behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Preparing us for something greater.
Yeah, like he's got you. He's working it out.
Yeah, he's shaping us, refining us,
right,
equipping us to be a light for others.
And that something greater might not look like what we think it's going to look like. It may not be fame and fortune.
Right.
Right. It might be something much more profound, like encouraging someone or offering a listening ear or being that light in someone's darkness.
Right. And shifting our focus from what's in it for me to how can I be a blessing to others.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that's a powerful message.
Yeah, I agree.
And so we've talked about persistence with patience prepared for promotion. But I really want to dive into this third point. Promotion comes with a platform.
Yes, let's do that.
Dr. Daniels uses this really vivid image, a kneel-down moment, to illustrate what he means.
Okay, a kneel-down moment.
Yeah. So imagine this. Joseph is now in a position of power. He's riding through the streets.
Yeah.
He's commanding respect from those who once knew him at his lowest point.
Oh, wow. So the people that were mean to him are now having to bow down to him.
Right.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's a powerful image.
It's a moment of triumph, vindication, but also a moment that requires incredible grace and humility.
Yeah. How do you think Dr. Daniels is connecting this kneel down moment to our own lives? Because that's a very specific thing with Joseph.
Right.
But how is that going to apply to us? You know what I mean?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we should explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
So welcome back to the growth spurt.
Yeah.
Picking up where we left off, we were talking about that that powerful image that Dr. Daniels uses of the kneel down moment in Joseph's story. You know, he is risen to power in Egypt. And those who had wronged him are now having to, you know, bow before him.
It's such a vivid scene.
Yeah.
You can almost feel that tension.
Oh, yeah.
That mixture of awe.
Right.
And maybe even fear from those who once dismissed him or mistreated him.
Yeah, Dr. Daniels, he really uses this to highlight the contrast between, you know, Joseph's past suffering and then his present triumph. And he doesn't shy away from the fact that, you know, those who hurt Joseph are now facing the consequences of their actions.
But what I find so interesting is that he doesn't frame this as a moment of revenge or gloating.
Right.
He challenges us to look deeper.
Okay.
To consider what Joseph's response in that moment teaches us about forgiveness, grace, and ultimately trusting in God's justice.
It would be so easy to just be like, ha, look at you now, you know?
Right.
But it's not about that.
It's not about the payback.
Yeah, he pushes us to think about it from a different perspective.
So what is that different perspective? How does he want us to interpret this? The kneel down moment.
He wants us to think about, you know, Joseph's hurt. Instead of focusing on, like, you know, the outward display of power. Like, you know, look at me, I'm in charge now. He wants us to look at that inward transformation that must have happened within Joseph. Remember, this is someone who endured years of, you know, betrayal, false accusations, imprisonment, and yet he doesn't react with bitterness, anger. He seems to approach it with such...
composure.
Yes, composure.
Compassion.
Yeah, like, I'm not going to rub it in your face. I'm not going to try to humiliate you even more. He actually offers them reassurance, provision.
He does.
You know, and it speaks volumes about his character, you know, and I think Dr. Daniels is suggesting that this is evidence of Joseph's deep faith and his understanding of God's overarching plan. You know, even though he suffered unjustly, he chose to forgive and to see, you know, those experiences as part of something bigger.
And so these kneel down moments aren't about seeking revenge or proving our superiority. It's about recognizing that God is ultimately in control. And trusting that he will bring justice and righteousness to prevail.
I think those moments, too, they might not always look like what we expect. You know, they might not be this big, like, ooh, you know, now I have the power. It might be something that happens in your heart. You know, like, you choose to forgive. Let go of the bitterness and embrace God's plan.
And that is true victory.
Right.
It's not about conquering others. It's about conquering yourself.
Exactly.
It's allowing God to transform our hearts and minds, even when we face adversity.
And, you know, speaking of facing adversity, Dr. Daniels dives into something that he calls kryptonite.
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 Okay, I love that analogy because it really it makes you think of Superman and, you know, his vulnerability to kryptonite.
So what is our kryptonite?
That's a good question.
He's saying that just like how kryptonite weakens Superman, impatience weakens our faith. And it hinders us from waiting on God.
That makes a lot of sense because I think so often we get caught up in that I want it now mentality.
Oh, yeah. Especially like nowadays. Everything is so instant.
We want answers. We want solutions. We want breakthroughs, and we want them like yesterday.
Like I ordered it on Amazon. Need it now.
Exactly. And so that's where that impatience becomes our kryptonite.
It makes us doubt God, question his timing, give up on his promises.
It's like we forget that God is on a different timetable.
Yeah, his ways are not our ways. And his thoughts are not our thoughts.
And sometimes that waiting period, that season of uncertainty, is what's shaping us, refining us, and preparing us for those blessings that are yet to come.
You know, it's like he even uses that passage in Isaiah 40.31. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. And they shall walk and not faint.
I love that verse.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It reminds us that waiting on God isn't about being passive. It's about actively engaging with him. Seeking his guidance and trusting that he will renew our strength.
Yeah, and he'll give us the power
to overcome
our challenges.
To soar above them.
And I love how Dr. Daniels emphasizes that this isn't just about enduring hardship. It's also about the anticipation.
Oh, yeah.
Looking forward with that hope and expectancy
Yeah.
to the good things that he has in store.
Like instead of thinking, why me? Think about what is God doing in me and through me during this season of waiting.
During this season.
And I love how you said, trusting that even in the midst of the unknown, he is working all things together for our good.
And that's where the faith comes in. Believing and trusting and having that hope.
Right. And that leads us into that whole concept of being prepared for promotion.
Right.
It's not about sitting around and twiddling our thumbs.
It's about preparing yourself.
It's about actively preparing ourselves for the opportunities that are to come.
Right.
Developing our skills, expanding our knowledge, becoming the best version of ourselves.
It's like that saying, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. You got to be ready.
Yeah, you got to be ready.
You can't just be sitting around.
Right.
You got to put in the work.
And he gives those down-to-earth examples like praying for a house.
Yes. Yeah.
But racking up debt.
Right.
Or praying for better health.
Yeah.
But neglecting your physical well-being.
It's like, okay, well, are you doing...
Right. Are you meeting God halfway?
Are you putting in the effort? And I don't think he's saying that, you know, we have to be perfect before we can receive God's blessing.
Right.
But it's just having that willingness.
Open heart.
Yes, an open heart. Being willing to put in the work.
And recognizing that God is constant.
Yeah.
Working.
Behind the scenes.
Even when we can't see it. Preparing us for those blessings.
Yeah.
I think that's such an important point.
Because we can get discouraged when we don't see the results right away.
Right.
But God is always working.
Right.
He's got you.
And those blessings might come in unexpected ways. It might not be the promotion we were hoping for.
Right.
The relationship or the financial breakthrough.
Yeah.
It could be something totally different. Something we didn't even think about.
It's about trusting that he knows what's best for you.
Yeah. And it brings us back to that idea that promotion comes with a platform. It's not about personal gain or recognition, but it's using that platform to shine a light for others to share our stories, to offer hope, to point people to God, like Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before men that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven.
Yeah.
Our blessings aren't just for us. They're meant to be shared. They're meant to inspire and to point others back to God.
And sometimes that involves being vulnerable, talking about your struggles.
Yeah, and that can be really hard to do.
For sure.
But Dr. Daniels is encouraging us to trust that God can use our stories, even those messy parts, to touch the lives of others.
Yeah, those messy parts.
Yeah.
That's usually what people connect with the most.
Right.
Because
it's real.
It's real, and
Right.
It's what gives people hope. Like, oh, they're a regular person. They struggle too,
Right. And he's not just talking about sharing from a stage or a pulpit.
Right.
It can be as simple as having a conversation with a friend or a family member who's going through a tough time.
Just being willing to open up and
Right.
be encouraging and supportive. Let them know that they're not alone.
And creating that space
Yeah.
where vulnerability is welcomed
Oh, yeah.
and celebrated, where people feel safe to share their own stories and experiences.
And that can be really powerful.
It can be.
Breaking down those barriers, building bridges, creating a sense of community and connection.
And recognizing that our stories have the power to connect us, to heal us, and to remind us that we're all in this together.
We are. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to remember that Dr. Daniels' sermon, it's not just these stories, these ideas.
Right.
It's a call to action.
Okay.
It's an invitation to examine our own hearts. Evaluate those waiting seasons in our lives and consider, how we can be prepared for that promotion so we can use those platforms and shine God's light.
It's not about just listening to a sermon and feeling good.
Right.
It's about allowing God's word to really transform us from the inside out.
Inside out.
And to live a life that makes a difference.
So as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want you to think about, what resonated with you, what challenges you, and what steps you can take to embrace God's plan for your life, even when it's hard, even when you're waiting, wondering, and enduring hardship.
Welcome back to the Growth Spurt. We've covered some really powerful stuff from Dr. Daniel's sermon, Waiting, Wondering, and Winning.
Yeah, it's been a good one.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what do you think about, Dr. Daniel's emphasis towards the end on celebrating God in the now?
Oh, yeah, that's so important. It is. Because it's so easy to get caught up in, looking ahead to the future or dwelling on the past that we forget to appreciate where we are right now.
Right, and he's reminding us that God's presence is available to us right now, not just in some far-off future.
Like he's with you in this moment.
Right here, right now.
Yeah.
And it's like he's challenging us to shift our focus, cultivate a sense of gratitude for what we have right now.
Yeah, be present.
Yeah, be present.
Be thankful.
Even in those waiting seasons.
Yeah, and he uses Joseph as an example. Wow. After all that he went through, he could have just been bitter.
Oh, absolutely. Resentful.
Yeah, just angry. But he chose to embrace those opportunities and make a positive impact.
And really, I think it's about recognizing that our circumstances don't define us.
Right.
We have the power to choose how we respond to them.
And that choice really does make all the difference in how you experience life.
Are we going to focus on the negative or are we going to look for the good?
Exactly.
And I think Dr. Daniels is urging us to make it a habit to, recognize and celebrate God's blessings.
Even in the little things.
In those everyday moments, the small details that we might miss.
Yeah, like we're so busy looking for the extraordinary that we miss the extraordinary in the ordinary.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like training ourselves to see the world through that lens of gratitude.
Yeah.
Appreciate those small acts of kindness, those moments of laughter, the simple things that bring us joy.
It's the little things.
It is the little things.
Yeah.
And also acknowledging that, God is working.
Yeah.
Even when we don't see the immediate results. It's trusting that he's using every experience, to shape us into the people he's called us to be.
And it reminds me of Romans 8:28.
Yes.
And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose.
Even when it doesn't make sense, even when we feel lost, God is working behind the scenes. And I think that's where faith comes in.
It is.
It's choosing to believe, to trust, to hope, even when we don't have all the answers.
Yeah, you just got to trust the process.
And so as we wrap up this deep dive, I think Dr. Daniel's sermon was a powerful reminder that even in the midst of waiting, wondering, and enduring hardship, there is always hope. There is always a reason to celebrate God's faithfulness and to trust that he's working all things together for our good.
Absolutely.
So let's go out into the world. Let's embrace those kneel-down moments with grace and humility.
Yes.
Let's use our platforms to shine God's light and celebrate his presence in the now, as we patiently wait for the fullness of his promises.
I love that.
Remember, you are the light of the world.